What's up, Sports Wars? This is Roy coming at you with a college football video today. Me and Aaron did our college football recap this past weekend, and I figured we'd come at you with another college recap video again this weekend. Aaron is not with us today. He has got some house duties to do. He just recently moved into a new house, so he's taking care of business today while his Bears aren't playing, so I believe playing a little bit later. But I do have a new co-host today. Some of y'all might recognize his voice. You look close enough, you probably recognize his face too. This is actually my brother, Sports Wars admin as well. Our graphics guy. He does a little bit of everything. Renaissance man of the group. This is my brother John. How you doing this morning, John?
What's up, man? Better known as the better half of the Morgan Bros.
The younger half, the younger. That's
yeah.
We're gonna touch on some quick videos real quick for us. We're kind of up against it this morning because football's getting ready to start. We're gonna try to make it quick. Try not to be too long winded. We'll jump right into it. Number one team in the country, Alabama, played Ole Miss. Somewhat of a rivalry game in the last few years. It did not present itself as a rivalry game yesterday. Alabama jumped all over their ass. The final score was 62-7, and that was only because Alabama kind of pulled up at the end. It was terrible. John, what were your thoughts on that one?
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. I was going into that game hoping that Ole Miss was gonna at least put up some sort of fight, and
at least make it a game.
The first couple possessions it looked that way, but then, man, I stopped watching that game at the end of I don't even think I made it through the first quarter.
By the end of the first quarter, it was 28-7.
Yeah, I was done.
Ole Miss didn't score another point for the rest of the game. It was terrible. By the half, it was 49-7. And then Alabama, like I said, Alabama just kind of pulled up. They only scored 13 more points for the rest of the game. Final score was 62-7. That was supposed to be at least somewhat entertaining. This reminded me of the Georgia-South Carolina game a couple weeks back. Everybody kind of expected it to be a game when it really wasn't.
Yeah. I just want somebody to fucking humble Alabama, bro. They've been on this high horse entirely too long.
I mean, that actually segues right into the next game I wanted to talk about was the last team that actually humbled Alabama a little bit, and that was Auburn. The only downside of that is they actually got their ass humbled a little bit this weekend by Ed Ogeron and the LSU Tigers. They beat the Auburn War Eagle Tiger some shit.
Whatever they are.
Yeah.
That was a good-ass game, though.
Yeah, I mean, final score was 22-21.
Game-winning field goal.
Yeah, Ed Ogeron reminds me of Farmer Fran from The Waterboy.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, he's bouncing around. I'm sure if they let him coach the games in like blue jean overalls, then he would do it with like no shirt on. He would just be standing there with his man titties hanging out. But I didn't catch very much of this game just because I dislike Auburn. Although I probably should have watched because Georgia plays both these teams this year. LSU looks tough. They showed that they might have showed that win against Miami was not a fluke. Did you catch any of this one?
I watched a little bit of it, man. To be totally honest with you, what killed Auburn, man, was third down penalties, bro. I watched at least 3 or 4 third and long penalties that gave them the first down. And it gave LSU the first down and kept the drive going. Both teams had – looking at some of the stats now, both teams had 9 penalties. So, I mean, but Auburn had 2 turnovers to LSU's 0. So, I mean, those 2 turnovers, I can't recall exactly where those came from. Time of possession was pretty even. Auburn had it for just under 25 minutes, while LSU had it for a little over 35 minutes.
I mean, this kind of strikes me as just a typical SEC game. You get 2 guys that beat the shit out of each other. It was one on a 42-yard field goal, which is not something that the SEC is known for. We're not known for big leg kickers.
Alabama damn sure ain't known for kickers.
Oh no, they're known for kickers, but not for the right reasons. LSU finished it up. I mean, looking at the box score here, I mean, they were slow and steady. 7 points in the first, 3 in the second, 3 in the third, 9 in the fourth. And meanwhile, Auburn scored the majority of their points in the second and third. Well, scored all their points in the second and third quarter. I'm sure Auburn next week is going to come out, or the next game they're going to come out pissed off and probably beat the shit out of whoever they're playing. LSU, I think, is likely going to get complacent at some point. They've got their 2 big wins early in the season. I think that they are likely going to lose. Just typical Ed Odron. Ed Odron is the poor man's Mark Richt. He gets a lot of talent and doesn't necessarily win with it.
I like that. I mean, but this is what, his second year?
Second or third.
Has he been there that long?
Yeah. I mean, Ed Odron is like, he is the stereotypical, like if you were building a coach from LSU in a lab, that's Ed Odron. That's what you'd end up with. Something tells me he has eaten like raccoon and gator at some point. Like that's just who Ed Odron is.
Now this win should put them in the top 10, especially with Wisconsin and Notre Dame going down. Notre Dame won. Excuse me.
Yeah, Notre Dame didn't go down.
They should have.
Wisconsin definitely.
Yeah,
I think honestly, beating the number 7 team on the road, that definitely should vault them into the top 10. Wisconsin's going to drop. I don't know who else really drops. Because I mean the teams that were ahead of them, Washington is 10th. They beat Utah 21-7. Penn State was 11th. They beat Kent State 63-10. So there's not really. I'm sure they can vault some of those guys. A lot of the teams were. There were some.
See, my problem is these teams that struggle against these teams that they shouldn't be struggling against. That should have a factor in their ranking. That Texas A&M game last week, you know, who did they play that they struggled?
It was Clemson.
Yeah. That should have dropped Clemson, in my opinion.
Yeah. But, I mean, Clemson gets the benefit of the doubt because they're 2 years out from a national championship. The teams that LSU would have to jump. There was 2 top 10 teams that lost yesterday. That was Wisconsin and Auburn. Notre Dame won barely.
Against unranked Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Stanford is 9th. Washington's 10th. Penn State's 11th. I know Washington and Penn State both won. But if Auburn and Wisconsin both drop out of the top 10, which they should, then that'll move LSU right at number 10. They might jump. They might jump Penn State, and they would probably move up to, I think, 8th at the highest. Because they're
you
not
think they jump 4 spots?
Well, 2 of those spots are going to be because Wisconsin and Auburn both lost.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, it wasn't – they didn't win big, but they beat a top 7 team in the top 7 team's house. So, so that to me, that should be good enough to move them up a little bit. So moving on to the next matchup, the other one that was supposed to be a marquee matchup of the day besides the LSU-Auburn game was the last game of Urban Meyer's suspension. Urban Crier, Urban, I know he knows Meyer. That was Ohio State versus TCU. TCU kept it close, and we're doing pretty well for the first half through a lot of the third quarter. And then Ohio State just turned on the Jets and took over the last quarter and a half, and ended up the final score ended up being 40-28. I do think this is somewhat of an impressive win for Ohio State to go down to Texas and beat TCU like this. TCU's become a better program in the last few years. This isn't the same TCU program that would have been kind of a laughing stock 10, 15 years ago. They've turned out some heavy-duty talent there at TCU in recent memory. What are your thoughts on this one? Did you catch any of this one either?
I did not watch any of the game, but I've got some of the stats pulled up, and it looks like TCU just, didn't show up at the second half. They were up 14-13 going in halftime. Again, it looks like the turnovers, TCU had 3 turnovers to Ohio State didn't have any. And Ohio State scored 20 points in the third quarter against TCU's 14, and then TCU just didn't show up in the fourth at all.
I mean, isn't that just basic? I mean, when you're teaching somebody football and you want to, and they ask you, how do you win a game? Isn't that just basic? Like, oh, you don't turn the ball over and keep the ball as long as you can. I mean, it's basic math. You don't.
Yeah. I mean, as far as time
ball.
of possession, it was pretty even. I mean, Ohio State had 31 minutes to TCU's just under 28. I'm at 29.
I mean, you keep a hold of the ball. That's basic. The other team can't score if you have it, and if you give it to them, then you don't have a very good chance of winning. I think that's about all we can say about that one. Ohio State was expected to win.
That quarterback did damn good for Ohio State. Haskins looks like he almost had a 400-yard game. 24 out of 38 completions, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, that's a hell of a game.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State is what we thought. They'll their true test comes in 2 weeks when they play Penn State. They'll coast next week. I believe they got Tulane.
Is that in who's home on that game?
What, Penn State?
Yeah.
I believe that one's in Columbus. Let me double check just to be sure. No, that one is in what I forget what they call it, College Station, or what the hell they call it.
Yeah,
it's in Penn State. It's in Penn State. That one's September 29th. We got that in 2 weeks. So that one ought to be a fun game. So that's about as much as we can really say about the Ohio State TCU game. There was only a handful of matchups. I'll just kind of gloss over these real quick. Notre Dame survived a scare against Vanderbilt. Penn State beat the shit out of Kent State.
Texas beat the shit out of USC, 37-14.
Yeah, I mean, and I saw what's funny is I saw a headline yesterday saying, "Oh, Texas is back," and I'm like,
shout out to Jenna.
Yeah, I saw a headline yesterday saying Texas is back. Well, wasn't it 2 weeks ago that they were questioning Herman's job, where they were like, "Oh, I don't know if he's gonna stay there because of a bad first week." So I mean, Texas won, Michigan won, Oregon won, Miami won. There's
shout out to that North Texas punt returner.
Yeah, the fake fair catch.
Oh my Lord, yes.
So that was great. If you haven't seen that replay, please go see it. It is insane.
It's been shared multiple times in the group. So
you don't understand. Watching football for so many years, you don't understand how something like that happens because you always hear play to the whistle.
Yeah,
and 11 guys didn't play to the whistle on the other team. Going straight into next week's games. Typically, we like to touch on games between 2 ranked opponents. There are only 2 of those next week, and they're actually both West Coast games. Pac-12 is what it is. And actually, thinking about it, one of these games is likely not going to be against 2 ranked opponents because right now they have Arizona State ranked 23rd. Well, they lost this week, so they're likely not going to be ranked next week. They're playing Washington. I do expect them to get the shit kicked out of them there. Washington was a top 5 team 2 weeks ago. And we also have Stanford and Oregon, 2 undefeated teams.
I'm rooting for Oregon on that one.
I mean, Oregon, it doesn't help Georgia because both these teams are ranked below it. I just want an entertaining game. With it being on the West Coast, it probably doesn't start until like 10:30 at night, so I'm probably not going to see much of it.
Actually, it starts at 8.
Oh, okay, awesome. So there
are, of course, unless they change it.
There aren't a bunch of SEC teams. I know we're kind of SEC heavy. Me and my brother, Georgia fans. Yeah. Clemson plays Georgia Tech next week in Atlanta.
Pray for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, somebody get some holy water out there for Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Not like I said, not really a bunch of big marquee games. Georgia, Missouri, Notre Dame, Wake Forest. 20 years ago, Nebraska, Michigan would have been fun to watch, but now Nebraska's 0-2. So
that Georgia Missouri game, man. I understand Missouri's unranked, but traveling to Missouri, man, that's a tough place to play, man.
I mean, they hung with us. They gave Georgia a pretty tough test last year.
Yeah.
For the first half, and then Georgia pulled away, much like South Carolina. So that Missouri Georgia game is always a fun one to watch, and it usually ends up high scoring as hell. So I don't really know what to expect from it. Let's see. I mean, the matchups that we've got this week are like Virginia Tech versus Old Dominion, Miami versus Florida International. It's not really. You can tell this is the last week before in-conference play really kicks off. You get some teams that do have some in-conference games. Probably the biggest SEC game of the week, which is insane to think about, is Mississippi State versus Kentucky. That's the big SEC game. Both of them are undefeated.
I like Kentucky.
Mississippi State's ranked 16th. I'm going to go – and Kentucky's at home, but I like Mississippi State. That quarterback they've got, Nick Fitzgerald, he's pretty tough. Auburn, Arkansas is next week. That's not really a rivalry game. Who gives a shit? But that's it. I mean, that's Wisconsin, Iowa. That one's usually a pretty tough matchup, but that's a tough matchup if you like old school football. If you like fullbacks and two tight end sets and shit, they're going to go after each other, and it's going to end up being probably like a low scoring game. It's going to end up like 10-9 or some shit. Let's see. I mean, that's it. The Georgia game is, like I said, that's the one obviously that we're keeping an eye on. Hopefully we don't have any weather that hopefully we don't have any weather that causes any more cancellations. We had like 3 games canceled this week due to the hurricane there. It's going to be interesting to see when they get those rescheduled. I know there was a big fuss last year about games getting rescheduled. We do have a couple other hurricanes. I know this you didn't tune in for a weather report, but we do have a couple more hurricanes out in the Atlantic Ocean that everybody's keeping an eye on. But that's the final thoughts I have for this week. John, you got any shout outs, anything like that?
No, man, I don't. I'm glad football season is underway, and devastated that Neal and Jones went down, but hopefully we can make something out of it.
Yeah, as we're recording this video, we got the Panthers Falcons game going on in the background.
Yeah,
I'm gonna sign off of here so we can get in there and watch the game, and we'll have more college football next week. Hopefully, we'll have the whole crew next week. We had the intention of making this Aaron, John, and me, but schedules haven't lined up. John was under the weather last week. Aaron's doing his husbandly duties this week, and so hopefully we'll get everything lined up and get everybody back together. We'll definitely have everybody together by the time we really get to the meat of the season. Like I said, next week is the last week before conference play really kicks off. So it's going to be an exciting season. Hopefully everything goes well, and good luck to your team, but also fuck your team.
Fuck your team.
Yeah, Eric, subscribe below. If you got any talk shit, please talk shit below. We love hearing shit talk. Sign up for our Facebook group, geeksandgamers.com. Subscribe to the main channel. We got Patreon, everything. We got different tiers of Patreon. Check it out. We definitely like hearing from everybody. Enjoy your weekend.